when I went away to school, I went to other parts of New England, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. I took him with me, and he brought me home. At the time I was in school, he was very much a part of the curriculum. And being from New Hampshire, when I went away to school, I went to other parts of New England, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. I took him with me, and he brought me home. He was very much a part of my consciousness, of my being a New Englander. In 1977, I read the biographies, and I said, someday I'm going to do a one-man show on the stage. And, it's sort of, the idea's kicked around my head for years, and a couple of years ago, I actually just turned on a video camera and decided to do a little bit of Robert Frost, and I said, okay, now's the time. And literally, a couple of weeks later, a script came into my periphery through a friend who was reading plays for theater. And so he put me in touch with Andy, and Andy sent me the script, and I just said, this is at least a starting point. Over the years, I'd heard a couple of readings that he'd done. So, with his what he calls his free verse, which is just him talking and telling stories and commenting on things and giving his thoughts about poetry or about a specific poem or somebody's response to a poem. It was like gold to find those recordings. Somebody once described Frost reading his poems as gravel running down the cellar steps. And I never felt that way about it. I think there's so much character and expression in what he does. But he's trying to get us to bring the meaning out of the poem instead of trying to bring the meaning through the voice. With poetry, there is a music. As I say, no truth is ever settled into place in our minds until it can be sung. I think there's a music to the prose part of this. There are certain rhythms that he has that are very telling in terms of his personality, in terms of his mood. Up to now, I've performed almost exclusively for academics, in academic communities, Hanover, Williamstown, the back room at my bar in Los Angeles. That's a little bit of an academic community back there. And they love the poetry. That was the part that I wasn't sure about. How are they going to respond to these poems that are kind of old chestnuts for some of them? They love the poetry. And what I chose to do this time around, which I haven't been doing, but I've been pretty much reading the poems up to now. But Gus and Andy and I discussed acting them, and really, leaving the book behind, and actually putting a lot more expression into them than Frost did, or a different expression, let's put it that way, than Frost did when he read them. I call it a 251-man show. But they are very much a part of this. I really have to bounce things off of them. I look into people's faces and talk to them and single them out sometimes for if there's something that I think might apply to them. I don't want the audience to think that I'm talking about them when I say, well, people have curious ideas about what poetry is. I don't want the audience to think, well, you people are among them. I'm going to teach you something tonight here. I will teach you something. I will tell you something, but I don't want you to think that, I'm singling you out. I'm chastising you for being a bad student. This has been a very emotional few days for me. Coming to realization after so many years. I started thinking about this and working on this when I was living in Toronto years ago, and I had had a couple of good years as an actor, and I was out of work for a while. And I was married to a girl who I'd done summer stock with in New Hampshire. And I started reading the biographies, and she was very bright. She would come home from work every night. She was basically, you know, supporting me at that point. She would come home from work every night, and I'd wear her down talking about the biographies, and she would, but she you know, she loved talking about it, and she loved the poetry and everything. And you know, we went our separate ways. We were young, and you know, we still loved each other very much, and but we were going in different directions, and so we split up a few years later. And she died in 1996 at an early age. She was in her mid-40s, and she died very suddenly of a pulmonary embolism. And when I first did the first reading of this play for some friends in a little pub, I picked up the two books that I would carry, which would be the complete works and In the Clearing, which was his last book. And I got to the place, and I opened them up to see where I was going to read them, and there was a nameplate, Gail Rich, in the book In the Clearing. And so I feel like she's on the stage with me every night. And you know, I'm so happy for that, because she was so much a part of this. You know, I'm still a little bit in touch with her family and everything. So her brother came to see it in Williamstown last summer when I did a version of it. And you know, all these ghosts on the stage, the family, you know, the Eleanor and Carol, and you know, all these people I got to know reading the biographies and reading the poetry. And then, just again, serendipitously, the music that Gus chose to play in the theater before is Charles Ives, who was actually my first New England muse when I was, you know, in high school. My father played this thing, and I said, "Oh, that's really interesting. What is that?" He's a New England composer, you know, lived in Connecticut, and so that music was with me. And the first time I came out to walk on stage the other night, when I heard this music, and I went, "You can't be serious!" This is so, you know. It's been a very emotional week for me.
Back to our home.